Hey you guys, we're so sorry we haven't got a video out for you this whole past week. We've been at the Annapolis Boat Show and it has been absolutely amazing. One of the things we did here at the boat show was record a podcast with one of our inspirations, 59 Degrees North, Andy Shell and Mia, and we got a chance to go on their boat Ice Bear and just record a podcast, kind of tell our story a little bit. So we were able to video the podcast, and Andy gave us the audio to sync with the video. So that's what we're going to play for you guys right here if you want to see the podcast. I'm sorry, Sierra. I was blocking her out a lot of the podcast.
Billy likes the attention.
At least you
guys know it.
At least you can hear her. And if you guys are really into sailing, you guys want to learn or just hear other people's inspiring stories, definitely check out 59 Degrees North if you like podcasts. It's an amazing podcast. It's one that I've learned a ton from in the past few years since I found it. And those guys are just awesome people to begin with. So here's the podcast. Leave a comment and let us know if you like it or not. And just make sure you subscribe below with the little notification bell button clicked so that you don't miss anything from us in the future, and hope you enjoy.
Cool. So Sierra, it sounds like Billy has listened to the podcast. Have you listened to the podcast before?
Well, he does listen to it every night as he's falling asleep. So yes, I get to listen to it every single night. Am I as tuned in as him? Not exactly, but I do hear a lot of your guys' cool interviews and stories, and it's awesome.
Well, the way I usually start these is to ask the guest to describe the setting. So this is pretty cool that we're doing this in the boat show. So if you want to kick us off and describe the setting, just kind of set the scene.
So we are right inside of your guys' boat, and we've never been on it before, and it's beautiful, and we're right in the middle of the Annapolis Boat Show, so it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a bright sunny day out and beautiful weather. A little bit cooler than we're used to in Grenada right now, but really, really nice.
So that was gonna be my next question: is where is your boat, Billy? You can take that one.
So our boat Adrenaline is in Grenada right now, and we're just kind of hunkering down there for hurricane season. And come November, we're gonna start working our way back up the Caribbean.
So when you guys meet if you're at a gathering of people that don't know who you are, and people say, "Oh, what do you guys do?" How do you answer that question?
We normally say we're like travel journalists. It's usually a easier answer than saying, "Oh, we make YouTube videos." So sometimes they take us a little bit more seriously, but sometimes you have a better answer for that. What do you say?
Yeah, I say we just work on the internet and make some videos and write some blog articles, and then if they're interested in that, we kind of get into it a little bit.
Cool. And what was your guys' inspiration for doing this? Like, where did it start?
So I grew up on the water up in Long Island, and I love the water. We only had 3 months of summer up there, 2 months really, and then I kind of started to stretch it a little bit. And we were always boaters, but never sailors. And as I got older and wanted to have summer year long, I realized I think the best way to do that was through sailing. So I started really reading a lot about sailing and looking at some blogs of other sailors and stuff like that. So that's kind of the start of the inspiration, I think. And that was before I met Sierra, and Sierra grew up down in Jupiter. So I don't know.
Yeah, what was have you sailed your whole life, or?
No, I had never sailed until I met Billy.
Okay.
And honestly, did we really know what we were doing when we first set off? Not at all. Billy was a kite surfer, so you had known how to sail because of kiting. And then you got Tula, the first boat, and kind of just experimented from there. We were just learning along the way. But I had always been like on fishing boats, center consoles. So Tula was the very first sailboat I had ever been on.
What was the first Tula?
So Tula was my first sailboat, and it was a little 26-foot Morris Francis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a little
That's
pocket
a cool
cruiser. So as I started researching a little bit about sailing and what would be a good boat for cruising, at least coastal cruising, I started to notice so I lifeguarded on Fire Island, and where we parked for the ferries right across the canal, there was always this boat in the boatyard. And as I started realizing what makes a good cruising boat, I kept eyeing this boat. It had a nice full keel, and it was double ender, really nice classic lines. And finally, one day I went over there, and I just asked what the deal was with it, to the people in the boatyard. And they said, "Oh, some guy just kind of left it here. It's ours now. We kind of want to get rid of it." So they said, they're open to any offers. And it was pretty beat up. I didn't take a good look at it at that point yet. But But I was like, all right, well, I don't really have any money right now. It was the beginning of lifeguarding, and I was still
How
in
old were you?
college. I
Oh,
was
you were
like,
still in college.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe like 20 at that point, 19, 20, something like that. And so at the end of the summer, when I had some money, I went back over there and I took a good look at it, and I saw it needed a lot of work. And so I kind of made an offer to them, and it seemed like they were very urgent to get rid of it at that point. It was just kind of taking up space. And I think they mentioned they were going to like crush it if no one took it. So I said, how about I just kind of pay you guys to put it in the water, and I'll just take it off your hands. And they came back to me and they said, we need $800 for it, and we'll put it in the water for you.
What the heck?
So I,
Wow.
so I got it for $800. Yeah. Yeah. So I spent about a year restoring it, and yeah.
That doesn't. I mean, how long did you take to restore Satori? 2 years. 2 years. Yes, 2 years and counting. Wow. I mean, that in that particular boat, a Morris Francis, like you have very good taste, Billy. Like that's a really special, neat little classic boat. It's awesome.
It is. I don't think I realized it to that extent originally, but as I, through my ownership of it, I think I did, really get to appreciate it.
And
So-
even more after we sold it, we're like, oh.
Sierra, how did you guys meet?
So after Billy restored Tula, he sailed down the East Coast, and the engine actually broke down right in Jupiter where I lived.
I like how
and-
you just say after Billy restored Tula, like that was just like a quick like the amount of stress and pressure, and like I understand we just
Yeah.
hopped right over that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the engine broke down in Jupiter, and I think you were out of money at that point and needed a job. So he came in. I was working at a paddleboarding and kiteboarding shop, and he said, "Are you looking to hire anyone?" And I was just working there, and I was like, "I don't know, like give me your information and I'll pass it over." And I ended up calling like all of his references, and we worked together for like a year. And he didn't sail at all at that point, and I was always wondering, like, you have this boat, like why don't you use it? And I think you were kind of just exhausted after that entire trip of learning and just learning what you were doing. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to sit here for a while. And then we started dating, and we tried to go to the Bahamas after, like, I've been a bunch of times, but on power boats, and you had never been before. And we were like, okay, we're going to do it. And we got like halfway, and we weren't moving. We weren't going in the right direction. So we're like, okay, we're just going to turn around. And we ended up
How'd
sailing.
you fix the engine?
Yes, you replaced it. Just with a rebuilt one, right?
Yeah, that's right. So so I sat there for a while actually, and
And when is this? Like, what year are we talking here?
2015, something like that.
2015. Okay, all right.
About right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, a little earlier.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So actually, my engine just because it was sitting for so long, I didn't know I had a bad seal between the water pump and the crankcase. So I actually seized just because I had some water in there, and
shit.
I didn't realize. So I found another Volvo engine, same exact engine on eBay. So I got that shipped down. It was used, and
Sounds like your kind of guy, Lee.
yeah, and you should know that all this work that like it's not Bristol finish work here. But this is just making it strong and seaworthy.
So it's a really funny phrase I heard. Liz and Ted, who work for us, they work on super yachts, and they have a line where like if they're not able to fix something up to the super yacht Bristol finish standard, but they are able to get it working, they say, she'll fish. Like good enough for a fishing boat. She'll fish.
That's great.
Exactly. That's about our standard.
We've
of doing
adopted
things.
that as well.
And then Payne always hides things from 20 feet away. A lot.
Are you mechanically inclined? Like, are you into that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I like to learn. I grew up just kind of tinkering and fixing things. I grew up like fiberglassing and sanding old boats and stuff just in my dad's backyard. So yeah, I'm handy, but I'm not. I don't think I would say I'm a professional at repairs and stuff like
What
that.
did your parents do?
My dad was in sales, like corporate. He sold like corporate awards. Yeah, and my mom was a home care nurse, and she started an online business for wound care certifications.
What were boats doing in their backyards? Was those yours or theirs or?
My dad's. Yeah. They grew up. But my dad grew up boating. My dad grew up clamming on the Great South Bay on Long Island. He did it all through high school and college. And then from when we were little, a few months old, we were on the water up there, especially in the summer. And same with my mom. She grew up on the water too, on boats and stuff. But yeah, I just told this story the other day. Growing up, my dad would always have he was a Boston whaler freak, so he would always have 2 Boston whalers in front of the garage, and those were the ones that were allowed to be there. You could see them from the house and everything. But then behind the garage, there are at least 6 or 8 other Boston whalers.
All different states of disrepair. Like, they all needed a lot of work.
Like half of them were upside down with just holes in the bottom. He just, find deals or people getting rid of them, just take them by. But he said, if I could fix them up, I could have, whatever I fixed up. And he helped me buy the engines for the first 2 boats I had. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. And what did your parents do, Sierra?
My mom she was a teacher, and now she's a elementary school principal.
Okay.
And my dad's a pool contractor, and he, in like high school and even college, he was a commercial fisherman, just like on the side. So he was always into building boats and that kind of thing. So I did a little bit of
boats.
Yeah,
Like
he
wooden
would
boats,
get he would get the hull and kind of build it out from there.
Power boats, sailboats.
Like little center console, like fishing boats.
Okay.
But
Wow.
wooden, yeah.
Wooden, really?
Yeah, wooden with fiberglass.
Wow.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Does that make sense?
And what did you guys go to school for?
I went for marine bio.
Okay.
And you did.
Yeah, I did. I just finished with like a liberal arts degree. I did a concentration in marine science, environmental studies, and business. So that's what I finished with.
Okay, interesting. So back to this Bahamas story. Sorry, we got a little off track, but that's
no.
interesting there. So you guys set out for the Bahamas but didn't make it.
Yeah, so we turned around and we were like, okay, that sucked. We can either go back and kind of stop doing this, or we can go around the Keys. So we went around the Keys for a month, and we were like, this is great. But it was us 2 and our dog. She was there, right?
Yeah.
On a 26-foot boat, and we're like, we need a little bit more room. And at that point, one of your friends had said they found like a good deal on like an old trawler that needed a lot of work in New York. And we're like, okay, like we could go powerboat, we could go sailboat, it doesn't matter, but we can fix it. So we sold Tula.
How much did you sell her for?
$7,000, right?
That's a
Yep.
pretty big
From
return there.
800, yeah. So that's kind of what started this whole boat, fix it up and sell it kind of a thing. So we got the trawler, lived on it for 2 years, did a ton of work, took that over, it had 1 engine, took it over to the Bahamas, down to the Exumas, probably took it way farther than we should have or could have, but we towed that 17-foot Boston whaler that Billy fixed up in the backyard.
Wow. What year were you in the Bahamas? On the trawler?
Ooh, we did it like 3 years, I think. 2 years.
2015, 16 or 16 and 17?
Yeah.
Was it Lee, what year were you there?
2016, that winter.
Were you guys there during that big derecho storm that blew through? It was like 100-knot thunderstorm, like line of thunderstorms in the Exumas.
No, we wouldn't have been,
Okay.
because we're generally there from April to the middle of June, and then we would head back up to New
So
York.
you-
January 4th.
Okay.
Okay. So
Remember the date? It
'cause
was
I
a bad
think-
storm.
Well, Lee's, I don't know if you've heard Lee's podcast about it, but he was the guy that drove his Tiana up on the beach
Oh.
to save the boat, basically. So anyway, okay, so cool. So you guys were like motorboating down through the Bahamas. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, so we did that for 2 years.
What were you doing to make a living along the way?
I was still in school, and I was like lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons on the side, and
Yeah. And I was going up back to Long Island every summer to lifeguard on Fire Island.
Okay.
And then in the winter, I was teaching kiteboarding up in Stewart.
So you were sort of part-time on the boat and doing what it took to make money and then go back to the boat.
Yeah, exactly. We were cruising a little bit in the fall and mostly in the spring. Yeah, for that time period, maybe 3 years or so.
So what happened to the trawler?
so we had this very detailed plan that we would sell the trawler and get a slide-in camper and drive through Central and South America. And and I had read all these books. I had like highlighted our route out. And then at the very last minute, Billy's like, "Are you sure you want to get off of the water?" And I was like, "Well, like this sounds really cool, but like if you find us a cat, like we can go sailing again." Like thinking we needed a little bit more room and more than 1 engine and sails.
And I kind of ruined Sierra's perception of monohull sailing with that little 26-foot Tula, because we always had her powered up. We tried to cross, the Gulf Stream in 15-knot straight east winds, and it was just, it could have been calmer for her. And she's never been on a big, comfortable cruising monohull. So she said if we were going to stay on the water, we had to get a catamaran.
Yeah. Just, well, I mean, I guess you get spoiled, too, going to a motorboat and have a ton of space and just easy cruising around.
Right, exactly. The space was unbeatable at the time from what we were used to, but we started to miss sailing a lot. Like, we
Yeah.
really wanted to get back on a sailboat if we were going to stay on the water. So she said catamaran.
Cool. So, and then what?
Then, here, I'll go. Then Billy started searching Craigslist to find the cheapest and cat that needed the most amount of work so we could physically afford it. So we found one. It wasn't labeled well. It was just like catamaran for sale for adventure or something like that. And the description was not for charter, very low headroom. So
Yeah, so I wanted something like we've seen a lot of cats around, and especially the old affordable cats. We wanted something that still had a little bit of performance. I didn't mind some work, and yeah, we like to have our boats have some character. Like our old trawler had some character, and this catamaran that we found had some character too.
Where did you find it?
We found it on Craigslist, and then it was in a boatyard in Fort Pierce, and it was
Okay.
a French-Canadian guy who owned it, and he was, getting ready to sell it. He was selling it.
What is it?
It's a Loch Crowther 40-foot spindrift.
So 40 feet, that's a pretty big cat. I mean,
So it's 40
you're
foot
laughing.
on the water. It's not like any 40-foot catamaran that's in this boat show right now. It's the cabin top doesn't extend over the two hulls, so you have to walk out of the cabin top or the cabin area and then down into the two hulls from the outside.
Oh, that's unique.
And it's really sleek, slender hulls. It was designed for ocean racing. And for its time, it was a really, really fast boat.
How old is it?
88.
When is it fiberglass wood?
It's foam core fiberglass hulls, and the top side is all really good, African hardwood plywood.
So how do you guys like? I mean, it's one thing to refit. I guess I shouldn't say this because I'm on our third boat that we're refitting, but not in the sense. I mean, this is kind of how we got this one. So, how do you have the energy to keep buying old boats and fixing them up?
honestly, I don't know. How do we and we're looking at it now. We're like, okay, we do want to go farther. And our boat could be that, but we want a little bit more room. And we're like, are we going to refit another one? Like, what kind of state could it be in?
I think getting ourselves into it is kind of just a little bit ignorant, but at this point we should know. But I think we're pretty we just once we know the work we have to do, we just put our heads down and get it done because we know what the end goal is and where we want to be with it. So we just don't think about it, do the work we have to do to get there.
And we break it up by we have like set projects and we're like, okay, this has to be done before the trip, but all the rest can wait. So we'll do like 2 months in the summer of total refit and then 6 months of sailing, 2 months of refit, 6 months of sailing. So it's kind of back and forth, but it breaks it up nicely and gets us out there and not like drowning in fiberglass and sanding.
What do your friends and family think about all this?
You go first.
So I tell this story sometimes too. Right after college, I was getting my foot in the door in a teaching career, and teaching on Long Island is a pretty good career. So I was taking some prereqs for my master's in education, and I was working at a behavioral and special ed school as like an aide and teacher's assistant. And my dad knew I was kind of trying to decide what exactly I want to do. So he left a book on my bed one night, and it's called What Color is Your Parachute? Choosing the Right Career Path for You. And I picked up the book and I kind of started skimming through it and stuff. And it's very conventional, like trying to, help you decide what career path is right for you, but in a very conventional way. So I put the book down. I said, and at that point I had owned Tula, and at that point I decided that that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on this boat. I'm going to sail. I'm going to find an unconventional career path. What was the question again? Sorry.
What do your friends and family think about this
Okay.
unconventional
So
career
right.
path?
So
what was their reaction?
Yeah, so at the end of that year of restoring Tula, I sailed. They live on a river up there, and I sailed up the river, and I called my mom and said, "Hey, look outside." And she's like, "Oh my God, is that you?" And I was sailing up the river, and she called my dad. She's like, "I think your son, found his parachute. It's on a sailboat. It's actually." And so yeah, my dad was a little bit skeptical. They were so happy as long as I was healthy and being healthy for myself and not doing anything to harm anyone else and kind of chasing my dream. I think my dad thought that I would, do that for a little bit and then get into the, a conventional job. My mom is all about it. She was totally like go for it. And at this point, my dad is too. He knows we're not looking back, and we're gonna be sailing and traveling our whole lives. So he's so happy.
What about your friends and stuff?
They're all super supportive. They think it's awesome. A lot of them, they can never do it themselves, and they know that, and they say that, and
Because they're stuck in the world that they're in. Like
Yeah.
they're stuck in that 9 to 5 job, and they can never get out of it because it's a great job.
yeah. And I don't know if they would. Like a lot of them wouldn't if they had the choice, but they all think it's awesome. I think just a lot of support from them as well. They think it's pretty cool.
Was it similar on your side, Sarah?
So yeah, my dad was always about it. He actually came on adrenaline with us when we first went to look at her, and he's like, "This thing is awesome." He did say, "Get rid of the mast and just put in 2 awesome engines in it and go." But
Is that the catamaran? Adrenaline?
yeah,
Okay.
adrenaline's the catamaran. And my mom, she's a principal, and at first she's like, "Okay, when are you gonna get a real job? Like, don't you want to come to land and do all this stuff?" And we're like, we like what we're doing. And now they love it. They show their friends the videos. They come and visit us and get to see where we are. So they're all very supportive. My friends, a couple of them are like, "Yeah, let's come and do it." Yeah, and they'll come and visit. And some of them, they do their own thing. We're in different parts of the world sometimes, but yeah, they're awesome.
Was there any point during all this that you guys were like, "Yeah, screw this. This is too hard. We're gonna go home and do something else"? Like, what were the low points?
Don't think so. Do you have any?
Yeah. So that first trip down the East Coast, I haven't grown up sailing, so I took a few weeks just to sail Tula around Long Island, and I kiteboarded a lot, so I knew the concept. And as soon as I started sailing, I realized it was the same thing, just the sail is this way instead of that way. But yeah, on my trip down the East Coast, I had some rough moments because I was by myself. It was cold. I left like a week after Thanksgiving, and I was just kind of hopping from inlet to inlet by myself. It was getting dark early, and yeah, I just had some rough times. It was a good experience, but there were like 2 or 3 times where I was like, I don't think this is for me. It was just cold. It was wet. It was lonely, and I just wanted to like put the boat in the boatyard and just fly home and be a teacher. But yeah, I just kept going just because I thought I should.
Like, why did you keep going?
I think there was one instance I'm thinking of in particular. I was actually coming down the Chesapeake, and it was like a northeast wind, and I accidentally jibed, and it was a mess. It was so uncomfortable. I was getting really frustrated, and I pulled into, I think it's like Willoughby Bay down there somewhere, just a little anchorage I saw on the chart. So I pulled in, and I anchored the boat, and I was done. I was like, that's it. Tomorrow I'm calling boatyards. I'm seeing where I could haul this boat. I'm going back. And the next morning I woke up, and I just, walked around town and just was thinking for a little bit, and I decided, even though it's hard, I should, keep going, just see where I end up. At least get to a place where I was shooting, like Florida or the Bahamas, somewhere where I could just enjoy. We do a lot of water sports. Just enjoy the water sports and just, try to live the dream for a little bit.
How about you, Sarah? Have you had any low points?
I would say there's 2 top scary moments where I was like, okay, this is not safe. What are we doing? One was when we were in the Exumas. We found like a place to anchor, and we didn't have internet out there, so we were kind of just like, yeah, the weather's good, like we're gonna anchor here. And it totally changed, and where we were anchored was uncomfortable, not safe. If we had stayed there, like something was gonna break, we're gonna drag, whatever. So we're like, okay, let's just go offshore and head to Nassau in the middle of the night. And that was fine up until like, I don't know, like 2 a.m.
What boat are you on at this
We were
point?
on the trawler.
Okay.
And we just got into the biggest lightning storm I had ever seen, ever been. And I had never been scared of lightning. And then all of a sudden it's all around. And Billy was steering. I was like, oh my God, we're going to get struck. You're going to like get struck from holding the metal steering wheel. And the boat's going to sink and we're going to die. And I didn't know any better. And that was just terrifying. I was just crying. Like, I swear I'm never going to do this again. Just like, let us survive. And obviously looking back now, like that was silly, like what the heck. But
lightning sucks though.
yeah,
I see Leeds
lightning
over here
is
shaking his head.
scary. It is scary, especially when you're on the water and you're the only thing around.
Yeah.
At that point we didn't have a mast, so we weren't like a giant lightning rod. But
well, I'll give you something that I'm not sure is true, but it makes you feel better. I read this about lightning. It says apparently that there's this theory that when you're actually at sea, you're less likely to get struck than if you're anchored or at a dock because the boat is moving around and you have to build up these negative ions on whatever the highest point on the boat is. but when the boat's moving, they aren't able to build up, and that's why it's rare to hear instances of boats actually getting directly struck at sea.
Okay.
So that at least helps me sleep better
yeah,
at night.
that definitely makes me feel
Don't-
better.
I like that a lot.
Don't care. I mean, whatever. If it's not real or not, I'm gonna take that one.
Yeah, I will. That's gonna stay in my mind forever now. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, so you going through this lightning storm, and you're like, yeah, F this. I'm never doing this
Yeah,
again.
never.
So
Like,
how did you
get
get
me
over
out
the
of
hump?
here.
How did you get over that then?
We got to Nassau. We went to a marina for a day, and we had AC on that boat, and we just cranked the AC on and slept all day. And we're like, okay, like we made it. We're fine. Let's go dive. So we left and went back to the Exumas or whatever, and got back in the water. And we're like, it's totally worth it. What are we doing? So
At what point did you guys start doing the videos, and what inspired that?
I wish I started when I started refitting Tula, like the very beginning of the adventure. I took some pictures here and there and video here and there, but not much at all. And I was into video a little bit growing up, not a ton. And I think, trying to make this simple. So when I was teaching kiting down in Jupiter, I actually ran into some YouTube, vloggers. And it was Hannah Maggs was the channel. She used to be like a beauty and makeup vlogger, and then her husband Stefan, and I gave him kiteboard lessons, and he just told me what he did, and I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm always interested to hear what other people are doing, especially if it's their own business and stuff like that. And he was just telling me how they vlog, and he also runs a like e-commerce site and stuff like that. But I just thought it was so cool that they can just document their life, and that is also their career. So you can be creative, you can use your business skills, and just live the life you really want to live and make a career out of that.
Did you know that it was like possible before you'd met them? Were you even aware it was a thing?
I don't think so. I somehow I had an idea in my head, but not that specific. He really mapped it out of what could be possible.
Were you aware of like Delos and La Vagabond and these other guys that had gotten like?
No, I'm sure that they probably had, but not really. Maybe vaguely on my radar, but not yeah.
Because I've always found that interesting, like, because there's a lot of sailing YouTube channels now, and I just wonder, it's almost surprising that you didn't know about them. But I think that's kind of cool, because if you did, you may not have started, because they're so much bigger than everybody else now that it feels like it would almost be discouraging in that sense, instead of inspiring, because you're looking at it from a different perspective, because it wasn't a sailing channel that inspired you in the first place.
Right. And I met him in person, so I was putting
Yeah.
that person, that real life person, to what he was doing online together.
And I think your very first video was the tour of Tula, and I think it was pretty much at the same point where everyone was putting out their first video too. Like, what was it? Like 6 years ago was your first video.
Yeah, I think it was still on the tail end of being early in YouTube. So that started to get a little bit of traction, and then I was experimenting with making videos, nothing real serious, no real good storyline or anything like that, because we were still living a good chunk of our life just on, off the boat in Jupiter. I mean, I was living on the boat, but my life was off the boat a lot.
Did you start the video stuff before you met Sierra?
You had 3 videos.
Yeah, just a few, but same, just kind of all over the place, just experimenting.
Yeah, and how did you get involved in it then? Like, did you think this was a good idea? Do you think it was crazy?
I thought it was kind of funny at first, because we were working together, and he's like, my goal, like, I just met this guy. My goal is to make videos, and I'm going to make a penny a day on YouTube. Like, I can get money from ads, and this is so cool. And after like a year, it was from a penny to $1. And I was like, wow, like, you're actually doing this.
Yeah, and it's not about the money, but that penny a day or $1 a day was just a sign that if I could do that, then I know I could scale it and make this a career and make it a job and do it long term. Yeah.
How did you had to pay for it though when it was only making a penny a day, right? So like you're still working and doing all that stuff behind the
Yeah, we were
scenes.
still working seasonally, going up and lifeguarding Long Island in the summer and teaching kiting in the winter.
So this topic came up yesterday at the panel. I thought it was a really good question. My friend Chris Musler asked Brian, like, what is the does a YouTube channel have a responsibility to educate people in some way? Because there's this is going to be hard to frame this question, and Chris had a hard time yesterday doing it in the audience, but like, is there responsibility, because you guys kind of went out and figured it out and documented how you figured it out, and then other people get inspired by that and they go out and figure it out, but there's other ways to learn before you go and figure it out. So do you guys feel any responsibility to like say, hey, this is what we did, but don't necessarily do as I say, not as I do, sort of thing? Do you ever think about that?
Now, figure it out. Do you mean in terms of just strictly sailing?
Yeah, like how to go cruising, because I think Chris's distinction was there's entertainment and then there's education, but those lines are blurred quite a bit. And do you guys ever think about that?
Definitely. We think about what. So we offer value to the audience, and we try to always think about what kind of value are we offering to the audience, whether it's inspiration, entertainment, or education.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly inspiration and entertainment, and if it is education, we try to be really specific and upfront about what we know and don't know, and don't pretend to be experts in what we're not experts in. So I think as long as we keep that distinction, we're not lying or to anyone about
What's actually going on.
yeah.
And we try to put the good and the bad, so they're not only looking like, oh, this lifestyle's so fun, like I'm going to go do it. And then they get there and they're like, oh, snap, like what did we get ourselves into? And we also try to do like videos every now and again, like the pros and cons of anchoring versus a marina, to get people like, oh, like I can be on anchor, or I want AC and power and I can be at a marina. And we try to like tell people our costs, so they're not coming in here like, oh, we're going to spend this much, but we can cut costs this way, or spend this much money if we have it. So trying to give what we know and have experienced it and put it in a way where they can say, they did it this way, I see that, and I can do it that way, or I can do it my way.
Yeah, it's I've always made that distinction too. It's like when people ask for advice, it's like, well, I can tell you what I did. I'm not really sure what else. People are like, oh, what do you think about Catalinas? Well, I've never sailed one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. I have an opinion, but I don't need to share it because I don't have any experience with it. So I think there's way too many opinions flying around about information that people don't have any direct experience with, and I think that's a dangerous thing. And also, like, I think your guys' model of just going out and working really, really hard and making it work on a small budget, you're not the market for this boat show that's out here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's been a ton of people that came up and say, oh, we watched your videos and we got a brand new boat. And there's also been twice as many people that say, we're working on this boat and we're super excited to do what you guys did, and thank you for the videos. And so it's nice to hear.
How have you guys learned to be sailors in the first place? Was it trial and error? Were you reading a lot? Did you go to school?
I was reading a ton in the very beginning, Lynn Party's books, and reading some blogs, Liz Clark and The Voyage as well.
Her book on the counter over there. On the
So
shelf.
I was reading her blog a lot in college, and she was one of my big inspirations. I actually had an old beer growler, and I put a picture of her boat on it because I wanted to do what she was doing, surfing in French Polynesia and just living that dream. So I would fill that beer growler up with money instead of going to get it filled with beer, and that was kind of kept me on track to the goal.
That's really cool. That's like a small sort of a side thing, but like those little things about filling up a beer growler with money instead of beer, like that's the kind of stuff that you got to do to make it work. Like, doesn't happen by itself.
Absolutely. That's something we
really
learned
cool.
along the way, is there's always sacrifice, and wherever there are tough times, that makes the good times twice as good. So it's you got to have both.
What, Sierra, were you kind of learning as you went? Were you reading?
Oh, I'm still learning.
Well, we all are, but
no, not really. Like, Billy was reading and he was in charge and I was just doing what he said. And even now it's kind of still that way. And I've said to him all summer, like, I really want to take a course where you're not there. So I'm required to do everything on my own and learn on my own, and then come back with you and do everything with you. And that's still something I want to do, but I'm still trying to learn with him. So always learning.
Mia, I have to ask you this because you and I have this conversation a lot. So what was it like for you being on that Yachtmaster course, or when you sailed across the Atlantic without me? Because it was a similar situation for you.
I mean, for me, I think it was because I never taken any official training, and most of my sailing has been with you. I did one Atlantic crossing without you and some deliveries and stuff, but most of the sailing is with you, Andy. And taking that course was more a confirmation that, yeah, I actually know what I'm doing. But you don't know that until you test yourself. And I thought that was really cool. So I truly think that may not actually have to be a specific course. It could just be like doing a delivery with someone else, or like just getting out and getting experience with other people. Just makes you can't lean on the other person. You have to actually like formalize your own thoughts in your head. And even if you're not in charge, you can still like kind of be charged in your head and kind of make those decisions. I think that's a really good way to just step up a little bit.
Exactly. And I think that's something I need to do because Billy's always there as my safety net. And I can get lazy and say, okay, you know what you're doing. Like, just do it. And even though I know I need to do it by myself, but yes, one of these days I'm going to go do a course without you. Or
Have you taken the boat out by yourself? Or without Billy?
No, because it's
You're
our
always
home. We're
together,
always
yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And our catamaran right now is set up. It's not really set up to be single-handed. It'd be really hard to single-hand. It's possible, but it'd be especially tough for Sierra. It takes some muscle in some areas, and like a lot of our halyards are on the
I
mast
don't know,
still and
Billy.
stuff like
She
that.
looks tougher than you.
Oh, she could do it. It'd just be tough.
Um,
And I gotta say one more thing, Andy. Once I said, I'm a big fan of your podcast in the beginning, but your podcast was another awesome resource that has helped me learn throughout this journey as well, because I probably found your podcast maybe 2 years ago, but just especially getting used to our catamaran stuff like that, and just your interviews and things you talk about, even if I kind of knew what I was doing, it helped reconfirm some of those things, just listening to you and to you talk to other experts, and that's the same way you guys do it as well. So I got to give you some credit there as well.
Thanks, man. Well, hey, I mean, I learned a lot myself on this podcast. That's kind of why I started. It's like, well, I want to go and talk to all these awesome people, but it's kind of weird to say, hey, will you go and have a beer and talk sailing with me? But if you say, hey, I have this show and I want to do this interview, they're like, yeah, I'll do that. So it's been just 6 years of constant education. So that's really cool. And thank you for the compliments.
And thank you for sharing those conversations with us and everyone.
Lee, I'm going to put you on the spot here too. Now you're sitting here listening in. Like, where do you think a lot of your knowledge came from? Was it learned by experience? Was it books? Was it combination? What was the mix?
So I think it started when I started to first learn about sailing. It all came through books because the internet hadn't developed into such a repository of information. And then YouTube came along. Learned a lot through YouTube, and then the podcast thing really started to take off. And so it was kind of progression from books and reference materials back when I was 18 years old, and then as the internet came of age, and now I'm very into podcasting, obviously. So it was a progression.
Do you guys, as creators, do you watch all the other channels?
Not consistently. We have a handful. Sierra rarely watches YouTube, actually. She watches the Bucket List Family. There, do you know them?
No, I don't. I have to admit, I've only seen one episode of your guys. I love your Instagram feed,
See,
and I
that's
love.
what I am. Instagram is so much easier for me to follow because you don't have to sit there and like watch like a full on video, but you can just like scroll like, okay, they're here today, awesome,
Yeah.
and you're done.
Yeah, but no, I'm aware of some of the names, but that one I haven't heard of.
Yeah, I have a handful. Oh, so they're just a traveling family. They're not on a boat or anything.
Oh,
but
okay,
They
okay.
travel around the country, the world. But and I have a small handful that I'm pretty consistent watching, but not all of them. And honestly, I've been trying to get away from watching a lot of YouTube because I think it starts to draw a box around my creativity, at least. I kind of want to just be completely open to create what I can come up with in my mind instead of conforming to something similar that's out there already.
How do you guys divide the roles? Walk us through like a typical sort of episode, Sierra, I guess, with what's the progression? How does it come together?
So we both normally film. Billy's way better at like picking up the camera and talking to it. I'm better at picking it up and like getting like the shots of like the boat through the water, whatever. Billy's all drone. He does all of that, and he does the editing and the uploading. We're gonna start splitting that a little bit more, but I do all the writing and a lot more of the Facebook and kind of like the events, like the t-shirt designs and the events that we do at the boat shows. But Billy is all editing.
Yeah, and Sierra does a ton of the background stuff. Is what she like all the background stuff really, and then some social stuff as well.
What?
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mia. I forget what I was gonna ask. How long does it typically take? Like, are you guys real time with your episodes and stuff? Are you behind? How does that work?
We're about 2 months behind at this point, which is the max we're ever really behind. I'd like to be a little more current, maybe a few weeks to a month behind, and that will just give us a little buffer to be able to get some high quality episodes out. But just a little buffer to that.
What do you guys? How does it feel to be like filming all the time? Do you ever get sick of it? And how much of your life is on camera versus not?
It's hard. Definitely get sick of it every once in a while. Like, okay, do we really have to pick up the camera? And really during boat work, because we're like covered in either epoxy or a sander and covered in everything, and then we have to touch like our equipment, and it's like, okay, it takes twice as long to get the camera, set it up, as it would to just do the project.
Yeah.
But yeah.
How do you get over that then? Because you need to film it, right? Do you just do it, or do you sometimes just say, screw it, we're not doing it?
Sometimes we say screw it, but most of the time we're like, okay, we know we need to do it, and we planned that it would take longer because we knew it was going to. So we're generally pretty good. Like at the boat show, it's been fun to film, but there's also people everywhere that you're talking to. So at that point, it's like, I don't have time to go set the camera up while I'm talking to you. So.
Yeah,
sorry.
Boat work's the toughest because it takes you at least twice as long because you're filming, you're placing the camera somewhere, and then you're doing your work, and then you got to replace it somewhere, and you're just standing. So you're like, how the hell are people going to think this is interesting? But in the end,
well, I think Lee, you watch a lot of boat work stuff, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it is, and even to a ton of other. Well, in the end, like you can put together an episode, and people love the boat work stuff. I don't know why. I hate it, but. Yeah, exactly. Watching our misery.
Mia, this reminds me, you have to just quickly tell the story of when you and I were grinding the fiberglass inside Arcturus and how I tricked you accidentally.
Yes, we were gonna rebuild like the port side of Arcturus. We were gonna rebuild the settee and put in shelving and stuff. So we had to grind away some paint in order to like fiberglass. And I had never done it before. And I was like, well, if you have a vacuum, it's not gonna get messy. So Annie put on a pair of boards, I put on a bikini, and we were grinding fiberglass. And I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks. I was a snowman, like covered in like fiberglass paint. It's probably still glowing on me, like 10 years later. It was awful. So that was the last time I trusted you.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
That fiberglass dust is terrible.
But I think that's a cool thing. Like all of us sitting around this table, we've all to go back to. How do you inspire people to go out and do stuff like this? Because they're not going to be buying boats in the boat show, and you'd be foolish to anyway, in some sense, unless you really have disposable income. Like Brian from Dallas and I were talking this morning, like Garcia Yachts. This is just one example we were talking about. They're building a new catamaran, and it's like 52 feet. Going to be super cool, aluminum expedition style catamaran. It's going to cost $1.8 million. And then there's like a 10-year-old catamaran, also aluminum one-off, that's for sale on the brokerage market right now. That's like even $800,000. That's like unattainable amount of money. But what are you gaining in a 10-year newer boat for an extra what is that extra $1 million actually buying you? And you got your Morris for $800 and a ride out of the boatyard. So like we've all, I mean, Lee, what did you pay for Satori? Like 20 grand? Yeah, and put all the work in. We bought Arcturus. Well, we overpaid. We paid 40 grand for it and put a ton of work into it and sailed it across the Atlantic and then basically sold it for what we bought it for. But the key, the common denominator here is like you just make do with what you have and you put the hard work in and you deal with it, and that's just part. It has to be part of the fun. The process has to be part of the fun because you just wouldn't be able to do it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And is it Lynn Party that says, go small, go now, or something like that along those lines?
Yeah. Go small and go. What is it? There's like 3 parts. Go small, go now is the gist of it.
Yeah.
Go simple, go small. Go small, go simple, go now. Yeah.
Right. There you go. We just want to get out there and I mentioned this a few times over the weekend as well. We are so thankful that, we've had old boats and especially really old beat-up boats and just kind of built them back up from scratch because we learned so much along the way, like just how to do things and then the systems of the boats and just how not to do things.
What do you guys enjoy the most about what you're doing?
For me, honestly, it's not really like the sailing's awesome, but it's really getting to places and knowing that we got ourselves there and then going exploring these islands with waterfalls and diving with sharks and like doing all that stuff and knowing we got there on our own with a boat that we fixed up ourselves, that's just like, it's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, listening to your podcast, you guys really obviously enjoy ocean sailing and just being out there on the ocean. I think we haven't done too many. Like the longest we've done 3 or 4 days at a time. But I think even when we do longer passages, I think we'll still enjoy being in remote places, at nice islands and surfing and kiteboarding and diving. And that's really what we like about the whole experience.
How far into the future do you plan?
Generally, really not that far at all. We've been talking about a few years in the future now, and that's kind of the first time we've done. Yeah, but generally not that far. We just know at this point we're going back down to Grenada. We got to be back in Florida in June, and that's about it.
What's in Florida in June?
Sierra's sister is getting married.
We have to be there.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Are you gonna take the boat back?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, it's much easier to get from Grenada to Florida than it is getting from Florida to Grenada.
We're looking forward to that trip. That's for sure.
Yeah. Are you gonna try to do it in one long sail, or are you gonna island hop your way back?
No, we're gonna island hop because we missed most of the Caribbean. We went straight from St. Croix down to Grenada
Okay.
because we were kind of late.
That's a nice passage.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad. That
Yeah.
wasn't too bad. The going from DR to Puerto Rico and the thorny path, that was a little tough. But we can't wait to do it on a broad reach on the way back.
Sierra, what's your favorite island you visited so far?
Ooh, so I've grown up going to the Bahamas, and the Bahamas is amazing, and everyone says like the Bahamas is the best in the world. We've heard that from so many different people, and we haven't seen much of the rest of the world, but we're very lucky that it's so close to my family at home. And I'd have to say we went to Conception Island this year, and it's a little island in the Bahamas. Nothing's on it. It's a national park, and there was just so much life. There was a huge long white beach where we worked out on every day. There were sharks. Like I was washing the dishes, and I had our curtain open, and there was like 4 sharks like under the boat, and I was like, this is just amazing. Like, so I would have to say that has been my favorite place so far.
That's cool. How about you, Billy?
I couldn't give you one island, but so far, I mean, like we said, we haven't seen a lot of the Caribbean yet, and we've been up and down the East Coast, but that's really it. Our experience is limited, but the Bahamas so far is pretty tough to beat, and we've been finding some surf out there as well, so that's been making it even better being in the outer islands of the Bahamas.
But we know that each place has its own like perfectness and beauty that's different than everywhere else. So each place is its own unique, and
We still enjoy wherever we are.
I forgot you guys are into like the exercise stuff on the boat, and are Mia and I actually want to share with you my best friend, one of my best friends from growing up. He has a gym back in Pennsylvania, and he trains like Olympic athletes and stuff. And he's put together a program that he thinks would work on a boat with the limited resources you have on a boat and on the beach. So I'll send you that.
Send it our way.
And
yeah.
he's looking to get like little video clips and feedback and stuff, and gonna try to like do some stuff with it. So I'll send you the program, and if you guys want to see what you think about it and take some photos and stuff, that'd be cool. It's also like it's a combination like exercise but also preventative stuff. It's
That'd be
pretty
great.
cool.
Functional.
Yeah.
Have you guys used the sandbags yet?
No, I haven't.
We have sandbags on our boat, and that has been a game changer. It's awesome because we don't have to carry any weight with us, just these empty bags, and then we go to a nice white sand beach and fill them up, and we have some weights to work with. And
That's very cool.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. And wooden rings that we hang from like halyards and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I have used those before. Oh, cool, awesome. And Sierra, what does Jetty think of all this?
Jetty,
I love that Jetty has his own Instagram
Yeah,
account. That's their dog, Lee.
Jetty, as long as she's with us, she's happy. She was a rescue, and she was attacked when she was like 2, but as long as she's with us, she's fine. So if we're on the boat, she's fine. If we're on land, she's fine. But she does love being on the boat and in the water. Like if you say, do you want to go home? Like she jumps on the dinghy and she's ready to go back.
Aw.
Yeah.
It's our whole life.
Where is she now?
She is back in Grenada. Billy's sister flew down and is watching her. They're in a marina, and there's like a nice little field and goats, and they've been sending us videos of them playing together. So
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Well, do you guys have anything to ask them? Lee, Mia? Last opportunity. I know Lee's going to start talking as soon as we stop recording. That's usually your thing.
I just where to find you guys is all I have.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how do people follow you?
We are on YouTube as Tula's Endless Summer, TULAS Endless Summer, and then we both have all three of us and our dog have Instagrams.
Yeah, Tula's Endless Summer, and then Tula's Endless Summer _Sierra, and then Jetty's is Jetty the Gypsy.
Nice. All right, cool. Well, we're gonna be headed your way in the fall. Oh, I know. We're not there yet. I have to. Yeah, well, I'll sign off by asking you 2 questions. I should have preemptively warned you about this, but I'll put you on the spot anyway. But anyway, we're heading your guys' way in November. We're sailing first to Tortola and then over to Antigua, and we'll be bouncing around between like Tortola, Antigua, Grenada, and like you said, we cover a lot of ground. So, but hopefully we can cross paths. I'd love to see the boat and
Yeah,
meet
that
the
would be
dog.
amazing.
And do some workouts together.
Yeah, exactly. All right, 2 questions to wrap us up here. What do you want to recommend? Question number 1. It can be anything at all, like a book, a place, a boat, whatever. And who do you think I should interview next on the podcast?
I got. Can I do 2?
Sure.
So I know someone had mentioned it in the past, but Liz Clark in the Voyage of Swell, I think she would be awesome to have on here. But also here at the boat show, we've been staying with our friends Ruby sailing at Ruby Rose.
Yeah, okay.
And Nick is from the UK, and Teresa's from Australia, and those guys are hilarious. They know some stuff about sailing. I think you guys would have an amazing conversation with them. So I recommend those 2 people. And then, anything you recommend?
I think the book was called Maiden Voyage. That was the first sailing book I think you gave
Tanya
me.
Abbey?
Yes.
That is so
and-
funny. That's the first sailing book I gave Mia.
And that was the first one I read, and it was like, okay, wow, like she did this, and this is awesome, and that kind of got me a little bit more excited about what we were doing. So definitely, Maiden Voyage.
And that's kind of a little bit after me and Sierra have been kind of doing our thing for a little bit, been on boats too, but it kind of re-inspired her to, I think, and be just take it upon yourself to be a better sailor yourself.
That's fantastic. Well, hey, thank you guys for coming out. Glad we finally got to meet. And sorry it was supposed to happen Friday, and now it's Monday, but we got it done.
No worries. Thank you so much for having us, and we're so excited to finally meet you guys in person. And
Yeah, thank you guys for everything, and thank you guys for producing the podcast as well.
Cool. Awesome. We did it.
woo!